going to open up for any questions.
And the only bad question is the one that you didn't ask. Okay, so feel free to ask them. We're here to answer it, and there's, you know, we won't be shy about answering them. Okay.
Hi, thank you all for being here tonight. Just curious, what is the criteria for a safe space? So how I'm assuming that there are certain things, maybe it's away from windows or doors, but how do you determine that for the different levels of the schools?
Well, it depends on the classroom, and what we've done at every school, and I know Officer Ramsey has done here, is gone classroom by classroom. And they post a red H. It's a red piece of paper with the traditional, you know, half H. And basically it's out of view of the hallway. And there's a debate, should it be out of view of the hallway, should it be out of view of the outside windows, that goes back and forth. But what we do is we say out of view of the hallway, and that's where the teacher and the students can congregate closely. They can be quiet, teacher can give clear, authoritative direction.
Hi. First, I want to say thank you for having this. I wish more people were here, but I really appreciate you all coming to let us know. I have two questions. The first one is, I've seen or heard about a kind of metal loop that you install by doors. You put them around the door handles so a door cannot be opened. And if that's something you've ever considered installing. And also, I've heard a lot about ALICE training, active fighting back, and if that's something, my sister-in-law teaches in a town in Massachusetts, and they're training kindergartners to actively barricade doors and do different things. And I'm curious how you decided what your response would be for all the different kids.
What's out there, if no one minds, I'll take this. What's out there now, there's a lot of ALICEs now. And Synergy 911 has a lot of commonalities. It's very parallel to training, where we call ours stay in place, lockdown, leave, live. The leave and the live is basically the part of ALICE that you hear so much about, the fighting back and taking control. What this committee and our individual administrative teams have considered so many times and so deeply is, what do we train our kids in? Because there's that balance between having them prepared for this situation and also frightening them. And our goal is to have a place of learning where kids come every day and feel safe and feel happy. And you know, it fulfills me to see our kids at the middle school, how happy they are, and I know the same situations exist in our other 5 schools. So that's a balance that we consider always at the 3 different levels. How much do we train our kids to have them prepared? To answer your first question, part of the Synergy 911 training is to be able to control entry to your classroom, and part of it is the barricading the doors, using the cord of a stapler to tie your door closed. Many of our teachers have on their own purchased apparatus or rope that will do the job of a door lock when a door lock isn't there, and they've you know, taken that step on their own. What we focus on so much, and especially here at the middle school, is with our faculty is, okay, you're with your kids 180 days a year. You get to know them very well, but when there's an emergency, when there's a situation, they need to know by the look on your face and the tone in your voice, this is different. I'm telling you to do something. You're going to do it right now. And that type of authority goes into part of our training, and they know it's different. Hopefully I answered your question.
Just, I'd like to add something to that too, because that whole ALICE subject comes up, and I think that when we talk about fight, we instantly try to think about, you know, fist fights, physical attacks. What we're telling people is there's all sorts of different options. And for a simple example, if someone walks into a room and every child in there throws their math book at them, that person that's the threat now has to react to that. So we're not saying necessarily that it has to be that physical encounter, but there's many different methods you can engage that are going to just remember that they're not going to they're going to move on to a different area if there's that passive resistance. So I think that was one of the faults, what happened when Alice first came out. People thought that their kids were going to be engaging with wrestling matches with these people, and that's not what we're looking for. And that's where it's so crucial as you go through the different levels. So that's why we tried to move away from the fight type scenario and call it something different. And I think the only other thing would be fire regulation sometimes affects some of the setups where schools are. Do you have anything on that, the fire and doors locking? I'm looking at the fire department here, not.
Yeah, some different departments or different communities have actually gone to the point of putting things like chains around the doors. And yes, that works in one situation. It does not work in all of them. And, you know, obviously, if there's a situation where people, even under the training under this tactic that we're talking about here, there are times that the teachers are taught that they need to leave and they need to get out that door. So if you have certain devices like the chains, there's a lot of other commercial devices that people are selling out there. And, you know, some of them work, some of them don't, but they all have trade-offs to them. So we kind of, you know, worked with the schools and tried to evaluate that. But as Mr. Keating said, sometimes every room has to kind of be looked at differently because there's no one size fit all, you know, depending upon the location of the room or anything else.
Is that for each room? Is that like your committee decides or the teacher deciding who their own round goes?
Sure. So we work with the Hingham Police Department. So at East, John Walden walked around with the custodian, walked around, we talked to the teachers about it. We refer to the experts in terms of that piece of it. And to kind of go back to the comment about training kindergartners, you know, I can't emphasize enough how thoughtful we are about how those things impact elementary school kids. There is a fair amount of research starting to come out about the impact of even running drills on elementary school students. There's an article I think that came out in the Washington Post not too long ago about the long-standing impact. And you have elementary school kids, when these drills happen, you have elementary school kids writing letters to their parents saying goodbye. I don't think any of us want to see that happen. So I think we are being very thoughtful and deliberate at all levels about how we strike the balance between making sure our schools are warm, welcoming, supporting places for all kids and adults, but being thoughtful about being it's safe and secure as well. It's an extremely delicate balance. So we are thoughtful.
I used to teach, and someone mentioned that fire departments, when they have the old hoses, they can cut them, and you can just slip them over the arm of the door. And I don't know if that's helpful or not. It seems something that, being a short individual, I just grab a chair and would throw that up there. I don't know if that's something you guys would do, or if it's stupid or whatever, but just thought I'd say it.
It depends on the door. We've actually discussed that in some of our meetings, and it has to have the right type of closer for that to work. But there's a lot of different options. There's the magnets that go over the door striker itself, so that the teacher can just pull the magnet away, and the door is always kept locked. So that, especially if they're, you know, they don't have to carry the keys with them all the time. So there's a lot of different options that are out there, and we have talked about many of these. And you know, some schools, one option may work, another one it may not.
And you know, as we get into door locking, I would say that, you know, from a capital perspective, that's something that I'm actively pursuing to update the, you know, get better locks. And of course, if we build any new schools, we'll absolutely make sure that they have the correct locks and stuff. So, you know, from a capital planning standpoint, all of these security items are being thought of, you know, right up to the point where, hey, maybe we should rekey and put in new locks within our schools. And you know, it's a capital item. It's a negotiation with the town in procuring that type of capital. But you know, these types of things are being incorporated right now into a master plan that's being built. So I do think it's important. I think everybody at this table thinks it's important that you know, in the event of an emergency, that teachers and students have an easy way of locking a door, which isn't necessarily the case in all our schools right now. But we do try to manage workarounds so that they can make themselves safe.
thoughts about classroom teachers being trained to have guns?
I mean, someone had to ask it. You see it.
Yeah,
I can't imagine.
I know that subject would come up because I've done a couple practice runs with this, and that subject always comes up. I don't usually go on the record, but my feeling is absolutely not. To me, I've carried a gun all my life. Carrying a gun is always an added burden on you. And I don't think that we talk about a learning environment in schools. I'm very conscious when I go into public places. I'm wearing a uniform. I'm easily identified. There's nothing more scary in an officer's, one of the things that's pretty scary in an officer's life when you're standing in a bank and all of a sudden some 5-year-old decides he likes the looks of your gun and starts touching it. One of the things you'll usually notice with officers, I'll give you a little hint, is that we usually keep an arm very close to that firearm, and it's a safety valve for us. We're always checking it. And you know, to have a gun to be effective and work, it's got to be on your side. It can't be in a desk. That's not a secured firearm. That's more of a danger. So I will go on the record and say I am totally opposed to that. I would not be opposed to security within the school system, though. But I don't think it's the role of the teacher to carry that extra responsibility on them. Any feelings or else, or did I hit that? Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, and thanks. And I also echo, I'm surprised there's not more folks here, but I'm hoping it was because of the weather and not the subject, because I feel it's pretty important. I'm a mom as well as I'm part of the system as a bus driver. And my question doesn't have to do with that, but statistically, have you looked into the effect of, and I know it's more important to train everyone and have these situations assessed and have everybody ready, but by training the kids, statistically has anyone seen that the kids can use that? Someone who's going to be a perpetrator can use that information? Am I making that question clear? Has there been any research or statistically, has anything been discussed about that as a problem? Not that that would override, I guess, the importance of preparing the kids.
You got that down? Okay. Go ahead.
Well, I think I just want to reiterate what Mr. Keaty said earlier, that there's research coming out that the training can do harm to the kids as well, and we're extremely mindful of that, but we haven't discussed that. We're not aware of any training as far as the positive effects of training students. You know, I don't think we've gotten to that point yet either.
I think she was trying to say is that if you do the training for the kids, could one of those kids use that training and use it against them? Right?
Yeah, you know how to pull a fire alarm. You know where the kids are going to go because they've been trained.
So it's a really good question. I'm not aware of any studies. It's a good thing we could start to research, but it is, once again, those questions we are thoughtful about. So, you know, for example, when we run a fire drill, we always tell the staff, because that is a mode that was used in a prior shooting, right? So those things we are thoughtful about when we think about how we run drills and how can we train everybody. But I'm not aware of any statistical information out there yet, but we think about it.
I would add to that as well, is that I think we try to keep certain information restricted in the ideas of how we do the nuts and the bolts of how we respond, and because there are some tactical stuff that we sort of want to remain somewhat secure with. But I think there's so much information out there. You know, if you can go on the internet and learn how to build a bomb, or, you know, this information is out there. If people want to get it, they're going to get it, and they're going to research it. So I think, regardless of that, we still need to make these plans, and we still need to move on with them, and hope. And I think that the best part about this is, to me, is something that you follow up as a parent and you try to have discussions. I know it's hard for parents to have dinner talks anymore because we're at meetings, we're at school events, we're at different sports activities, but these are conversations, because all this stuff that people are learning, whether it be your children or as an adult, this stuff doesn't just apply to public schools, it applies to life in general. These things stay with you when you go to a movie theater, or you go to church, or you go to all these different places. The focus should not just be on what we're teaching our kids in school, but these are life lessons that children can take and adults will take with them wherever they go. And hopefully you make an assessment when you go into some area and think about, how do I get out of here if something happens? What would I do? So these are, I think, one of the things we got to be thinking about. It's unfortunate that we have to think that way in a modern world, but it's definitely something you should be aware of. So I see it as a positive thing, but I do also see with a greater value how important it is to keep the schools a good learning environment. I think that's key for the kids. So we do have to it has to be blended in somehow, and I think they do a good job in making those assessments.
Just to continue with Chief Olson, if you talk to a lot of firefighters, ask them when they pay attention, if they go into a restaurant, about the exits or the capacity or anything else. So it doesn't necessarily just have to be about school safety or anything like that. We're trying to teach these kids all sorts of good life lessons if they're presented with a different situation that they don't know about. And trust me, there's a lot of firefighters that they will do that. They won't walk into a room unless they know that, okay, this is where the safest exit is or anything. So it's good lessons for all of us.
Hi, yes, I just wanted to comment on the last woman that just spoke about the training. I just wanted to say that my cousin was involved in the shooting down in Florida last year. And he absolutely said that the training that he had received months before it happened, that took place, actually saved him. There were kids in the hallways and in the restrooms that, because of that training, they knew exactly what to do. And I don't understand why we would be afraid of that, of our kids knowing how to block the doors, where to go. There's not going to be an adult with every child at every moment, in the high school at least, and in the middle school, in all the schools. But I mean, I don't understand why there isn't a push for at least the high school kids to be trained. I know other schools in this town have gone through the training, the private schools. I know that other towns have done it as well. I don't understand. I just want to know if there's a reason people not wanting to have their children.
I think part of it, when the schools the principals can help me out with this, but I think that's one of the things we're really, since we've been working on and discussing, and we talk about at different levels, and I think they mentioned earlier about different development levels. Obviously, with the high schools, we can carry it out a little bit more. And, I think over the past 2 or 3 years, we've really begun a big focus on this. And I think, I often say the best thing that you can do out here is to help us in this cause, is to provide the time, the energy, and I hate to say this, but funding for the schools to be able to do this. And I'm amazed at, and I'm actually shocked, and it's taken me a long time to realize that school budgets have absolutely no free time in them. There's mandated training everywhere you go. They're always, every time a new law passes, it requires them to do something else. They have to do this, they have to do that. So time is, to me, I think as parents, we have to make a decision if what we want our children to know. And I think forums like this and discussions like this help the feelings and where they want to go and where they want to steer. But certainly, we welcome more conversations, and this is something we want to expand, not just tonight, but out to other local schools and, you know, in the local PTO groups or parent groups, you know. But I think that's one of the things we've talked a lot about that this year, so eventually we'll probably try to get something deeper, and I think that's what they were talking about. You want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I would add that at the high school we certainly embrace the importance of training for our students, and you know, with particular reference to your point about the reality being that at the high school students may not be with an adult at every moment, and that really was actually a focus for us in the most recent lockdown drill we did, the one during passing time that I had briefly described earlier this evening. And as part of the message that I delivered to students prior to that drill, we gave particular focus to what do you do if a lockdown is called, it's during passing time, maybe you're in a restroom, maybe you're in a stairwell, maybe you're passing through the cafeteria on your way to your next class, and where do you go? And so we addressed all of those eventualities and had a chance to actually implement that and see how it worked out. So when students were given specific instructions, what do you do in the restroom? Or if you're in a stairwell, you come out, all the classroom doors have already been locked. You know, at that point, what do you do? Then it's okay to leave the building and go outside, and we identified a few areas that would be good for them to gather at. And so, you know, I think that event left people feeling good that we had practiced that. And I heard a lot of positive feedback from students about, well, we feel better about, we've now practiced this, and we have a sense of what we would do. And when we surveyed our faculty as well, I think teachers were very positive about that as well. So we'd like to build on that, and we'd like to add additional training. Next on our list, I think, is what to do if we have to go to a lockdown during lunch. You know, that is a potentially very chaotic situation. And so our school-based high school security team is looking at that as a very likely next drill for us to do. And then also on the agenda is, what about after-school events? And our athletic director recently went to a training for that. He's on our school-based security team as well. And so we intend to implement some training there too. What happens at an evening basketball game or a football game or even you're outdoors with your phys ed class. There's so many different possibilities, but we're recognizing the need to address all of them and address really the importance of students understanding how to react in the moment and to respond when there's not an adult in their immediate vicinity to tell them exactly what to do. All really important stuff.
Hi, I'm a parent of 2 children in the elementary level. Thank you for being here. Excuse my voice. There's been a lot of discussion about safety on the inside and doing all these drills. As far as outside, has there been any discussion on metal detectors being installed at all schools? And not only that, but the potential of security guards? You said no question was stupid. I recognize this is all budget.
Yeah, no, I'll answer the part about the metal detectors. No, we haven't thought about metal detectors. I think that when we start thinking about our schools, yeah, I think we think about a fine line between locking it, you know, making them like secure prisons versus keeping them open, and I think we strive to find that balance. So we have not thought about the of metal detectors. There's no effort on my part to get money for a budget to put metal detectors in or anything to that effect. What was the second?
Outside.
Oh, and the security guards. Well, I'll let you know, the chief talk more about that.
We're very fortunate that the high school has a full-time school resource officer there. The middle school has a full-time school resource officer, and Officer Walden spends his time between all the different elementary schools. It's been a very successful program. It's been so successful that we have actually been hired by like Notre Dame Academy to have a school resource officer there. We've been also hired by the South Shore Educational Collaborative, which is up in the industrial park, to have a school safety officer there. So the program idea is catching on. It's also becoming more popular with I said some other towns have told me they're private schools, so have been approached. And it's an option, but if I had to put an officer at every school, how many elementary schools do you have, John? 4, so we'd need 4 more officers dedicated full-time to that. That's an expensive budget item, unfortunately. So there are always budget costs. We try to do the best with what we have. You know, we're actually talking now, I don't want to give my officers a heads up, but the idea that our goal is to have officers walk into the school, and when they do walk in, we want everyone to say, "Hi, how are you?" Not like, "Oh my God, what are you doing here?" So we're talking about some programs in increasing our officers' responsibility while they're on the roll, and we've looked at some programs like officers adopting a school. So officers would just randomly stop by, would go in and would serve lunch, or would just go in to visit a class or participate in something. And the idea of that is that we were very successful during the OxyContin robbery phase when we had officers just randomly dropping in at pharmacies. We're not there all the time, but at least you never know when we're going to be there, and they see a cruiser or they see a marked police vehicle. That does make a lot of difference. So we are in the process of instituting some of those new programs out. We've started some of it already, and we will continue to interest. That should be out by the next couple of months once we get around to some of our other staffing needs. So we're trying our best to do what we can with the budget money, and I think that's what it always comes down to.
And I'd just like to add one other thing. The schools are just incredibly appreciative of the fact that we have the school resource officers that we do. I mean, you know, you know, you think about a school resource officer, and I don't know if everybody understands what they do, but they're a great source of comfort for a lot of kids, a lot of students, staff, just their presence, and they do a lot of teaching, and that's teaching and exposure to how do you become safe, how do you guide yourself. I think all of those, especially from an educational standpoint, is just paramount to a successful evolution as a child into an adult. And I think we're really fortunate to have these SROs in our schools. So thank you, Chief.
A couple times in the video they mentioned the importance of a tactical response. And I don't know if you could elaborate on our capabilities there, or if we had partners in the area that we respond with.
We're going to get out of this one.
I know. Okay, so are you guys aware of Metrolec Regional SWAT Team? I'm a part of that. We're 42 communities. We respond to barricades, hostage, active shooter, high-risk search warrants. So basically what's going to happen is, if there was an active shooter here right now, you have the local police. You have whoever's, you know, if this happens at 11:30 in the morning, right now, I mean, we're running like 8 guys on the road. You're going to have 8 guys immediately here. You're going to have Norwell respond. You're going to have Weymouth, Hull. So you're going to have those assets immediately there. On a tactical point, when a SWAT team will come in, is going to be probably like 40 minutes down the road. And why is because we're 60 officers from all 42 different towns, and they have to drive to whatever location there is. So what their response basically is going to be an evacuation. But the big procedure that we need to do is it's going to be over by the time the patrol is going to handle it. Okay, so we're going to end the situation. So we're going to end the threat off the bat. That's our #1 goal. And everything else, like, did you guys watch the video? Like the FBI showed up in like 5 minutes. We're not going to have that. Okay, so it's
6 minutes maybe.
Yeah, so yeah, 6 minutes. So that's why our training here at the police department and with the fire department is you know, we try to make it cutting edge. I've been on the SWAT team for 5 years. Most of my training that I've learned is from them, and I bring it back to our department. So everything that we have is brand new, cutting edge, and if it doesn't work, we can it. So our officers are ready to go in case of that right off the bat, and that's basically our first line of defense. All the other tactical training in an active shooter, or tactical teams in an active shooter, is secondary. So I hope that answers your question.
It's clear that a lot of effort and thought has gone into how everyone is supposed to react during one of these incidents. Could you talk a little bit about what's happening in the schools from a preventative basis, training, assessment of kids, of threats, that sort of thing?
Why don't the school start out, and I can follow up, I think.
Hello. Yeah, so we approach prevention from sort of two different prongs. The first being the development of the social and emotional self, right? So understanding feelings and how those feelings then impact others and impact your own mood. And we also look at prevention relative through assessment, and that's usually situation specific. So if there is a particular incident or a particular student presents with a level of concern, each of our schools has a school-based team that would meet, discuss the concerns, and if needed, we have the resources then refer that student for a risk assessment or a more comprehensive evaluation by mental health professionals. So we take a two-pronged approach. One is to develop, again, each individual child's ability to understand their own emotions, understand how those emotions impact feelings, and such as anger or frustration or rage, and give them, through a multi-tiered model, access to supports and strategies to better manage their own self. But for those students who may present with more concerns, we do have access to local mental health resources and threat assessment, which we would do either through our pupil adjustment counselors or through local psychiatrists or through different agencies that we have relationships with. So we try to take a comprehensive approach looking at prevention, but also identifying specific concerns and supporting not only the student, but also their family through that process. To answer your question? Okay.
I'll follow up on that as well a little bit. The police department, fire department have a very good working relationship with the schools. And one of those things that we've really worked on over the years and spent a lot of time reviewing with the school committees is how we go about sharing information. And it's very important that some of the information that we share, if it's related to the child's well-being, if we're going to a house because of an issue that may be occurring there, a domestic violence situation, a drug abuse situation, a drinking situation, that is something that we feel it's our obligation to notify the school so that they can be aware of that the child might be having problems there and to get them the resources they need. And it also helps us develop our issues so that we can sort of keep an eye on that situation. Many of our offices, when they're dealing with encounter kids out on the street or something or in their line of their profession, I know when I was on the road, countless times I made calls to the school resource officers and said, hey, I'm dealing with this child. What can you tell me? What's the situation? So I think we developed that network, and over the years, it's a network that we've really worked out well. And I think we keep the child's, I think the importance is trying to get the people help. And, one of the things that I think has been a change in the philosophy of police department, we're doing a lot of training in mental health, special needs. We realize that there's alternatives. There's a thing, a theory of what they call criminal justice referral, or the idea is that if we can intercede and get them the help, it hopefully prevents them from getting involved in the legal system or the court system. And we work very well with the schools on that. So there is sort of a tracking system in place that we do our best to work with. And I think to the most part, it's been pretty successful for us to help identify those people in need of services. Does that help you?
Hi, yeah. One of the responding officers in the movie mentioned the importance of maintaining key relationships with other agencies, FBI, other towns. You gave a couple good examples. Can you just tell us a little bit about the extent to which you do develop and maintain relationships with other agencies like that to plan, potentially prepare for situations like this?
I used to be a policeman. Now I'm a politician that goes around to meetings all the time. That's part of our job, to maintain contacts. The Metrolec unit really provides us with a great opportunity because they share the information so well, and they come back and train it, but they also develop and work with special groups, different speaker programs. So anytime we get a chance to send officers out to trainings, we're constantly doing that, and our goal with trainings is to have them bring back that information and share it with the department. We do active shooter training on a steady basis every year. We have firearms instructors. We train with firearms 3 times a year. I'm 61 years old, and I think the last time I went to do this, the firearms instructor told me I had to run down the course with a 50-pound bag over my shoulder, drop it to the ground, shoot once, pick it up, drag it back 30 yards, pick it up again, run back. And all the time I had to keep on shooting and everything, and I'm there like, so, and this is all just to prepare us for the actual stress. It's no longer just shooting at a target. And we have constant, there's all sorts of agencies where we have officers assigned to work with the different task force for the FBI, and there's constant information sharing. So we have officers assigned to the different branches that do that. And I think the whole idea is with the chiefs meetings and the different meetings, when I go to chiefs meetings, there's FBI agents assigned to those as well. We really rely on each other now because we realize we have limited resources, and it's so important. And I think if you're interested in joining the Citizens Police Academy, that we give a course, and I think that's one of the values that, give ourselves a plug there, but one of the values that we have people take that course is they realize that we're not just the Hingham Police Department. They're not just the Hingham Fire Department. We work with a network of people, and our jobs go well beyond the boundaries of Hingham, and how we interact with the different agencies is really enormous. So it's really, that's how we end up staying in touch. That's ever since 9/11, that's what the system has become. We talk about interoperability. I think if you had seen the film, the tactics that we respond to them in, it's the same. The Municipal Police Training Council trains the same all across the state, so that if an officer came from North Andover and happened to be working with us that day, he would know exactly what it is we're talking about because they have the same training. So there's a really good focus on standardization that we're working on, and fire departments are working on, and even with our radio systems of interoperability, so that we have that common way to communicate with each other is key.
And just real quick to touch on what the chief said, same thing on the fire department. We have those monthly meetings. If there was ever an incident in town, we could not handle that by ourselves. We have our mutual aid partners from the surrounding towns and from the county and across the state. We have the chiefs meetings. Every town that touches us, we meet with those chiefs regularly, at least once, if not twice a month. We're on a first name basis. If we had a problem, they'd be the first ones here helping us. At the county level, the chiefs are involved. We have ambulance strike teams, task force. We'll be calling in resources from all over the county and outside the county. So just kind of like the chief said, we have those network in place also.
I just had a question for the teachers and the children. It sounds like we all understand that there's different situations, and this should be many options that we have, but it seems we always keep going to the same one, which is the lockdown, and I'm just trying to understand why we don't practice like even evacuating like we do with a fire drill.
I would say that we do also practice evacuations, the case of fire drills, and have plans to, later this year, to combine an evacuation drill as part of a lockdown drill as well. Several occasions we have moved from a stay in place to a lockdown, and we'll also be combining the evacuation drill with that as well.
Okay, and is that just going to be for the high school?
No, at the middle school, we're still, fully trained in our fire drill procedure. That's something we do at the beginning of the year. We're very careful not to confuse the two, and sometimes we'll do them on the same day as part of the same drill, but usually we try and separate them so that the kids don't confuse our lockdown drill with our fire drill, which can be two different things, but sometimes used as the same. But definitely we're doing both.
At the elementary level, once again, we are going to kind of continue to work through those things. We work with the staff, we work with John, we work with our adjustment counselors to be, once again, we're going to continue to work with the students, but in a very thoughtful and deliberate manner. Like I just keep going back to that strike the balance. So yeah, we think those things through. And when we feel we're in a good place, we'll start moving those things into action.
I just have a quick question as well, just to piggyback on that. I've been fortunate to be in a different district, and I've been trained in the ALICE training, and I don't want to go back to that, but I just wanted to understand the philosophy behind the Synergy 911. I know they say that the first step is to kind of shelter in place, and then to sort of look at the other options where the ALICE training is more to evacuate being the first step. And I just wanted to understand the philosophy behind why we chose this one versus the ALICE. I just wanted to understand that a little bit more.
Hi, sorry, I think there might be some misunderstanding. They're not sequential, right? So lockdown, leave, live, we don't just first lock down, then we leave, then we fight to live. It's sort of how my understanding from the training that we've all gone through is our educators are taught to assess, right, one of the three things. So depending on this, and again, the other part that makes this challenging is we want to prepare our faculty and our students to be able to make the right decision in the right moment, given the right circumstance, right? So we're not going to necessarily train them in every single potential scenario that we could ever face in a school. We're teaching them a way of thinking about their environment, right? Thinking about the particular situation in front of them, and do they either lock down, leave, or live? It's not first we lock down, then we leave, and then we fight to live. It's depending on the situation around them. It could be any one of those three things. Is that fair? So I think they're parallel, but they're philosophically, I would say, aligned, but they just use different vocabulary to communicate what those things mean.
So if a situation happened and they were asked to leave in a scenario, if the kids don't know exactly how to do that because the evacuation part hasn't happened, how is that going to work for them?
What we do, I'm sorry. What we do is we train our faculty to be in charge, be assertive, be in charge of the students that are in front of you. Whereas the classroom that's right here by the main entrance, what might be appropriate for them is to live, to fight. What might be appropriate for the classrooms up on the third floor is they're still in lockdown. And what might be appropriate at the very same time for the wood shop in the very back corner of the building right by the nature trail is to leave. So we take our students at the middle school, they're trained in the stay in place and the lockdown. And then the teacher takes over at the leave and the live, assessing what's appropriate and to be authoritative and in charge of those students, giving very clear, simple instructions, and to take a different persona, whereas they know each other so well from 180 days of teaching, now the kids know this is different and I have to follow these directions immediately. That's where we've come in, I've been here 16 years, and with our security training, that's where we've come, where I'd say 10 years ago we were playing the what if game over and over and over and somewhat going in circles. Now the security is at the classroom level, and the teachers are so well trained and know you need to be authoritative. You need to do what's best for these children that are in your classroom that you're looking at right now, and not to worry about what they're doing next door or down the hall. Take charge of these kids and keep them safe, along with yourself. And that's based on what they're hearing, the information they're getting over the PA, possibly emails, and other things like that. I do recall seeing the ALICE acronym side by side when I was looking at the synergy training, and they're extremely similar. I would almost call them parallel.
So we've been talking about training the teachers, the students. What about the front office? When I buzz in, I hadn't been in the middle school in 8 years. I buzzed in and nobody questioned who I was. That does concern me.
It is concerning, and that's ongoing. You know, and we have that training with our front office staff, and at times it's better than others, whereas it's, may I help you? Can you state your business? Or, you know, what is your business here at the middle school? Whereas other times it is, welcome Hingham Middle School, come to the office. And you know, do we need to be more thorough and consistent on that? Yes, and that's part of our ongoing training.
Do you have one person in the office who would just stop somebody? You know, if they just keep walking.
At this point,
you know, like I go into the main office and I stop, but I don't.
Right.
know who else.
And I thank you for that. And our parents are extremely good at that and very well trained in our day-to-day routines. Do we have one person dedicated to that, to watching and monitoring the front door? No, that would be wonderful. It's a shared responsibility between our front office secretaries, our administrative team, and they are very good, and they'll let us know that that person didn't stop at the office, and we'll catch up and make sure they're there for an appropriate reason. But definitely
One more
that's...
question, sorry.
That's okay, go ahead.
We're talking about students that are in the system, in the Hingham school system, that if there's something happening at home, police are notified or police notifies the school. What about those students who went to the schools and now they're either out of college or in college and they're showing up to high school?
Well, I believe the people that are coming in from visiting, if once you're out of the school, you're out of the school. If once you've graduated, you'd have to check in as a visitor like anybody else, correct?
But they're not like on a
What's
list.
that?
Like, you know, like let's say they were a sophomore in high school and you knew there was family issues and they graduated. Now they're back, they're a freshman in college and they decided to come visit the high school.
Well,
Are
they
you
would
aware
have
of
to
that?
check in and...
Any student on any of our campuses that is, you know, not a current student, that's going to, you know, be a red flag to the teachers that see them, and they're going to direct them right to the main office. And we're even, you know, recently with final exams, or excuse me, mid-year exams at the high school, and we have kids coming back, they have a little free time to, you know, visit their middle school teachers that they miss and they want to say hello to, and we're in the unfortunate, you know, circumstance of saying, well, we're still in school. You need to check in the office. You can email that teacher and set up a time after school to get together. And these are kids we care about very much, and we have to say no right to them because of our security protocols.
And I think that's something that, you know, the other day I went to assist Officer Ford with a class. And after going to all these meetings, I said, like, oops, I got to go check into the office and I have to wear my name tag. Now, I know that sounded sort of silly, but it's the fact is that I have a name tag. I'm the chief of police. Everyone should know who I am. But if I'm wearing the white visitor's pass, it sort of lets everybody know that sees me that I'm there as a visitor, not an official capacity. And you know, the idea is that we as adults need to be responsible for that. And I can tell you 1,001 reasons why people have the right to park in front of the high school and run in for just a minute, and we never should have put a parking tag on them, and how dare we question them. And I can do that for every single school. So we as adults need to be responsible for the safety. And you know, there's a reason these plans are in place, and they apply to everybody. And you know, that's a tough thing, and I understand that. I'm only going to be a minute, but you know, that minute could just be the wrong minute. Probably won't be, but there's always that possibility. You know, I don't even like driving by South School at certain times of the day because I know that a fire truck or an ambulance could never get in there. I mean, is that the right way we do these things? So I think when we do certain plannings and buildings, we really need to start addressing these things and try to make remedies for that. And I'm not picking on anyone's school, I'm sorry. Right. Yep. Yeah. So it is crucial that we ourselves, you know, take this seriously and try to do that stuff. So, you know, and if you have kids that want to come back and visit the school, the appropriate time would be to call ahead and make arrangements with the school when to go there and visit those. I mean, we can't be watching them all the time, and we can't be, and you know, the biggest thing I suppose is the kids themselves, because they open up the door and they let 5 other kids in, or a parent. If you walk to the door with some stranger and you get buzzed in, do you just slam that door and tell the other person, wait for the buzzer to go off? I don't think so.
I have.
Well, good for you. That's good. Like, hey, wait, you got to check in. But I mean, so we ourselves have to be careful about these things. And I know, you know, it's difficult for people that are in the schools to sometimes say, like, hey, what are you doing here? Can I help you? You know, we have this thing in our lives about we don't want to be rude to people or get, you know, ask people questions. But I think when you're in the school environment, take it upon yourself to be a little bit more proactive about it.
Hi, thanks for being here tonight, everyone. And I just wanted to comment, just because it was brought up at South School, which is a great school, but as a Liberty car looper, more so at dismissal time, if there's any talk about that loop, and I hate to say it, but is a daily, I don't want to say, but something show. It's just, yeah.
I think over the years we've worked on it. We've tried to improve it. I think the fire department has had concerns. We've cut down trees. We've cut down expanded parking. It's just tough, and you know, these schools weren't designed to have the amount of traffic flowing through them. They were designed to have kids take buses. And, you know, I mean, I was a parent once too, and it's sometimes a lot easier to drive them in a car, but, you know, there isn't a school around that isn't faced with that problem. You know, if I had my way, I'd just tell all the parents, like, make your kid ride the bus, and we wouldn't have this problem, but that's not going to work. So what we continue to do is try to expand parking lots. And, you know, when we build buildings, you know, we talk to the school departments and we try to plan on extra parking areas, because it's crucial that there's sufficient parking there for all events. So it becomes very complicated, and we'll continue to work on that problem. And we'll be down there fighting with you and doing the best we can. It is a struggle, though. I don't have an absolute one answer, because it's a long-term spending issue, I guess. And I don't think there really is enough parking at all at South School. Let me ask you this, are you willing to give up a baseball field? Because you can increase the parking in the back lot if you get rid of the baseball field. I don't know. I mean, this is what happens. There's trade-offs. You know, we could cut down on the fields and increase parking, but then we get the pushback from the other side. So it's a very complicated issue. It's not a simple answer. We don't always look at things from safety issues. We look at it from a multitude of issues, which might not be the right answer you want to hear, but that's what happens.
My name is Carlos da Silva. I serve on the school committee. I know there was a question asked of the chief, what his thought was about arming our teachers. Just want everyone to know that this past fall, the school committee passed a resolution totally against arming the teachers. The superintendent and the student body also signed on to it. So I just want to let you know that we are totally against arming the teachers, and we are totally in favor of giving them more books.
As a bus driver, this question came up because I'm hearing you talking about training the teachers and training the kids. So I'm asking Mr. Ferris or the police, has that been discussed? I'm thinking like fish in a barrel. If a kid is on my bus and he is armed, are we prepared for a situation like that? Has that been brought up or discussed? Is that going to be something in our future for training?
Yes, it was brought up and it was discussed, and my understanding that there's a protocol in place for it, and perhaps we got to make sure you get trained on it. It's in the book too, I think, but there is a protocol for this. Yes.
Yeah, we know
right
emergency procedure, but I didn't know if there was more training going to. No, okay.
No, well, I mean, you
follow
know,
the procedure in the book.
You know, Patrick is on the committee as well, so I mean, we'll certainly take that up. We can ask more questions and make sure we get everybody in a continuous training. Training doesn't just happen once; it always has to be continuous training. So if there are additional questions, then we need to get the answers to those, and think about them and come up with a plan for them. So I would agree with that.
I would also thank you as a school bus driver, because we've talked about this and at different meetings. One of the recent tests we had is we've talked about how do we get enough school buses and where would they come from and how do they come from. And one of the tests that we didn't know about was when Foster School had a heating system breakdown, and the school buses were there.
Patrick rocked that day.
What was it? But, you know, a great thanks goes out to you for that, because that was a test of the system, and that was a good idea, you know, and this is what we've talked about, doing some bus drills and doing some drills with the highway, just to test the system to see how they get. So that's something we're talking about. It's just another, but, you know, there's other things that you have to work through when you do training. It's what time's best to get everybody there, how do you get, what we're trying to do is eventually get more people involved, just so that people see it. Even if you had a fire drill, that maybe have the fire department just respond with the trucks, or the school buses respond as well. So we are thinking about those things, and we're trying to institute them. And unfortunately, when I was young as a patrolman, I thought I could solve everything overnight. Now that I'm the chief, I realize it takes a couple of years sometimes, or a year and a half, or 2 years to get some of this stuff in place.
Hi. Have you considered doing any of this training for parents? And I think in particular about coaches, because there are so many hours where the school's most responsible adults are in fact the parents who are coaching a volleyball game or basketball or what have you.
We are willing to bring this show on the road to anybody that wants to go, okay? And that's what, you know, our plans are. We've talked about this at all our meetings. I think this is one of the first times that we've sort of started doing this stuff, and we really believe in, you know, educating people, and, you know, this isn't secret stuff. We want to get as many people aware of this. So we're not afraid to go out. I think public outreach is one of our main goals in this next phase as we move forward, and this is really what we hope is the first step that we've made to make it happen. We did a couple little steps first to test it. This was our first big turnout, you know, and we're going to continue. I don't know if there's 2 people in the crowd. That's 2 people that know something more, and that's the way we're going to look at it. So we're hoping that we can go to the individual schools, meet with different sports groups and stuff, and have these discussions. It doesn't just have to be, you know, and it doesn't have to just be the school's responsibility. You know, we as police and fire are more than willing to do this with other organizations. We work with the churches. We work with public, other businesses, nursery schools. You know, we're pretty much willing to go out and talk to anybody. This is an important subject, and I said it's what the kids are learning in school are life lessons. It's what they're going to bring with them wherever they go, and they're not going to forget it. So this is an important thing. So we definitely are willing to continue the road trip. Okay.
Could I just ask, we had a situation at the high school earlier in the year with an unplanned lockdown. Could I just ask how you kind of felt that went, and did have positives, the feedback been from that, and yeah.
Sure. Yeah, we we actually called it a stay in place. We didn't go to the full lockdown where students would be moved to the safe zone in the classroom and the lights would go off and people would feel as though they're hiding from an imminent threat. But we did call a stay in place protocol after receiving a phone call that we eventually learned to essentially be a prank call, named a student as being a threat and potentially having a weapon. And ultimately, I think it was an extremely instructive exercise for us, probably a whole lot more valuable than a regular drill would have been. And it tested our capacity to respond immediately to a situation that could have potentially been a threat. I was immediately very grateful that our school resource officer, and we've heard a lot of good things about the value of our school resource officers tonight, and I could not agree more on the value of our school resource officer, who was about 15 feet away from me when I received that phone call that morning. I immediately consulted with him. He was on the radio downtown, and within about 2 minutes, we had several police officers at the building. Mike was at the building not long after that, and maybe about a half hour later, we had a canine unit there as well to assist with a search of the building. And we were able to immediately find the student and address that situation, realize that it was a prank call, but still, in order to complete a search of the building, we're forced to keep the school in that stay in place for close to 2 hours on that morning. And it was extremely instructive. The debrief that we had afterwards with our teachers, and then the bigger debrief that we had a day or two later with principals from the other buildings, with police and fire, as we broke it down and realized some of the mistakes that we had made, frankly, and some of the things that we learned that we could do better, I think left us in a much better place. I was happy to say at the end of the day that everybody was safe throughout that. And I think the great majority of our protocols were implemented properly. One of the lasting memories I have of that is of one parent who, in one sense, had horrible timing. She had come in to drop off a lunch for her son moments before we called the stay in place, and she was stuck in the office for those full 2 hours. And every time I passed by on my way to talk to somebody on our emergency response team or with one of the officers in the lobby, I kept apologizing to her, and she said, "Don't apologize. I really feel validated by this, and I feel a whole lot more confidence to see that your protocols work and that people showed up instantly and that they did what they were supposed to do." So in the end, I think it really kind of a very unsettling day, but also a very affirming day at the same time.
So as we wrap this up, I guess I would ask the panel, what is the one thing as parents we can do to help you implement all these plans in place?
You know, it was stated earlier, and it's a very difficult situation when something like this happens, but as was stated earlier, is to let us do our job keeping your kids safe. And the way you do that is, as was in the PowerPoint, is you don't come to the school, you don't flood 911. If there's a prearranged location, you go there, and you stay aware to emails from the school, phone calls from the town, that sort of thing. But don't occupy us with dealing with you. Let us stay occupied dealing with keeping your kids safe. I don't know if anybody wants to add to that.
And I would just I would sort of echo what David said, but that day-to-day basis, those rules, sign in when you get there, and tell your friends, tell everybody. Go through the normal process, okay? Go through the standard process. It's important that we know who's in the building. Don't circumvent that, and wear the badges, and stick to where you're going. So, I mean, we thought a lot about what we wanted to say to the community, to say, this is how you can really help on a day-to-day basis, and then, we've done a lot of talk about an emergency basis, too. We've been in different sessions or workshops, and we've seen movies and debriefings on real disasters that have happened, and we just can't stress enough of what that traffic jam can do. I mean, and that's why we come up with these different locations. And it's like You go over there, we'll have somebody there with information for you, and then we'll have radio contact, and we'll get you to your kid eventually. But you just have to stay away from the scene because we got to leave room for the emergency vehicles and emergency responders to go there and do their job. Just it could be really crushing. Some of the things we've seen, it's just like, hey, we don't ever want to be in that situation. We want to have a clear path. So, we have thought about it, and that's why there will be those blockades, and that's why we're asking you to be in parking spaces. It's near the location, but it shouldn't jam anything up. I mean, you talk about the middle school. We only flashed one of those pictures up there, but every school's got a picture of where things are going to get blocked. And the reason why the Baptist church is sitting there for the middle school is because there's going to be a big, if anything happened, there'd be a big, for middle or south, a big section of Main Street's closed off. Probably right from Queen Anne down to, the place where no one can get to. So those things are really important. But I think more important is to share the word and be security conscious and tell your neighbors. And, as we have more of these sessions, make everybody aware. I mean, if you're teachers and faculty and stuff, talk about this stuff to other teachers. If you talk about one person and one person tells another they learned something, that's the way this all happens. All these meetings for us have just been, enlightening. We go and we discuss, and, you think that we've been doing it for a couple of years, and here's a big, long agenda, and we might get to one thing on the agenda because it takes us about an hour and a half to discuss that one thing, but all of us see different pictures, and I think that it's really powerful that you get yourself better prepared when you premeditate on, what would you do in a certain instance. And that's why we've instituted that in the schools, too. That's why they go over these manuals. At certain times and say, yeah, what would you do? Okay? That's the important thing. We all have to be security conscious and think about this stuff. So that's what I would ask people to do. Pass the word.
I have a mission for you, maybe. I know we've talked about at some of our different events is that we haven't quite reached this point. I think we're getting to the point of it now, about working with the individual school PTOs and what they can do to help out their schools. One of the subjects we've talked about is if you have children in a classroom for 3 or 4 hours and they really can't go anywhere, what other needs, what will those children need? Are they going to need water? Are they going to need a candy bar or something like that? So what a lot of schools have done that we've seen in the area, a lot of parents have participated in sort of putting together an emergency supply kit, namely a 5-gallon bucket, and stocking it with things, because I know this is a subject no one probably wants to hear, but someone's in a classroom for 5 hours, kidneys sort of don't last that long in younger kids. So how are you going to deal with that? So you need to provide some privacy area, mainly maybe having some blankets or curtains that you can give a private area to. So, I mean, there's a lot of things to think about that we don't always like to talk about, but I think that's a conversation at the lower level, and hopefully we can come up and give parents and the PTO members a way to help the school do something like that. I think it's always good when we can contribute on, and work to do something. So that would be my thought, and just continue to support the movement as we go forward with this, because it's important. Obviously, we're doing our hardest to do it. We want your kids to be safe, and we're doing all we can, and the school's doing everything they can. We may not all agree all the time, but there's definitely this is the best effort I've ever seen in 38 years. That we've really put forward to try to strengthen the system and work together, and I'm really proud of the relationship that we've developed between all these agencies. I think in a lot of ways it's a great commitment of the town agencies and the town departments that we can do this and have it work successfully. So I thank everybody.